You're listening to an Anderson Entertainment production.
This episode,
we'll discover a mystery mole in FAB Facts.
We're checking into a rather suspicious clinic in the Randomiser.
And Mark Woollard is back, taking us through 30 years working for Gerry Anderson.
That's all coming up in Pod 118.
Of the Gerry Anderson Podcast.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Let's get started. Let's go.
Spectrum is green.
The Gerry Anderson Podcast with Jamie Anderson and Richard James.
Accessing the Gerry Anderson Podcast.
Yeah, you're just showing off now, Richard James.
You recognise that, did you?
Well, I have a feeling you may have been doing your First Action Bureau computer voice there. Is that right?
Now, look, Jamie Anderson, we've got a bone to pick with you, haven't we?
Have you?
Well, for the past few
bone?
weeks, over on Twitter and on this very podcast, you've been a bit all kind of, FAB, it'll be FAB, all that sort of stuff. Well, what's gone and happened in the last couple of weeks?
Well, I mean, we played
now
out.
We know.
We played
now
out a trailer last week, and now hopefully by now you've also heard another thing, a little behind-the-scenes teasery bit.
Yeah.
First Action Bureau is coming.
Yes.
And for free. And if you're listening to this, then you know how to access it already.
Yeah.
So yes, it's coming on the 1st of October, but we'll talk more about that as we go. In fact, I'll tell you what, Richard James, I think we should have somebody introduce the podcast, and then we can introduce ourselves properly. How about that?
Oh, I see.
Here we go.
I'm Nicola Walker, and you're listening to the Gerry Anderson Podcast.
Wow.
Oh, one of our stars.
Acting royalty right there.
Yes, you are, Richard. Anyway,
welcoming you to the Gerry Anderson Podcast.
On that note, you're Richard James.
Yes, and you're still Jamie Anderson, just like you have been for the last 117 pods, but welcome to 118. Here we are for another hour and a half or so of Gerry Anderson-related stuff. Would you like me, Jamie, to tell our dear listener what they've got in store?
I would love nothing more. Please go ahead now.
Well, as you may or may not know, very shortly, we've got FAB Facts coming up. And then a little later on, we'll be hearing from our wonderful Podsterons by reading out some of their emails, because they have been emailing us in droves. Here comes a drove now. I don't know if you could see that, but they've been sending in their emails to podcast@gerryanderson.co.uk. They've been tweeting us, tagging me, Richard N. James, him, I'm Jamie Anderson, and him over there, just about to squeeze up that loft space up there. I don't know what he's putting in the loft, but that's Chris Dalek. Tag him as well, and hashtag us Gerry Anderson Podcast, and we'll see your tweets. And also, they've been writing on our Facebook group, so we'll be heading over there to see what the Podsterons have been getting on with over the last week or so. Crikey, we've also got some Gerry Anderson news, of course, because we know, don't we, that there's brand new Gerry Anderson stuff happening right now. And never has that been a truer word.
Or words.
Yeah, true. We've also got, as you may have heard, the second part of Jamie's interview with Mark Woollard about his experiences working with Gerry Anderson. And then, of course, at the very end, do hang on for Chris Dale and his amazing Randomiser.
I mean, is that all? It doesn't sound like very much when you put it that way.
I feel like I've missed something out.
I don't think you have.
I think that's it, isn't it? Yeah.
I think everything is there.
I think we need to get some more items, don't we?
Yes, if you've got an idea for a feature or an item you'd like to see in the Gerry Anderson Podcast, listeners, please do email us, podcast@gerryanderson.co.uk.
Yes.
Now, before I go any further, please do make sure that you have subscribed to the First Action Bureau podcast.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
fairly easy. Whatever podcast provider you're listening on, just search First Action Bureau and then press subscribe. And that means that when our first episodes drop, yes, I did say episodes, plural, on the 1st of October, then you'll be one of the first in the world, in the universe, in fact, to hear them. So,
amazing.
Yes, please go and do that. We'd really appreciate it. And make sure you share it with your chums, because we think they'll enjoy it. Now, I will just put a little warning in here, Richard. First Action Bureau is definitely for a slightly older audience.
Oh,
It's not Fireball XL5, it's not Full Feather Falls. This is more kind of 13 plus, I would say.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because there are a couple of naughty swears in it, aren't there?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. It's a bit real world, isn't it? That's the thing.
Well, it is. Yeah, it is a bit real world in 2068. Anyway, without further mention of First Action Bureau, let's go to another fab section of this podcast.
Oh, I see what you did.
It's Fab Facts.
Great.
Now, time for this week's Fab Facts.
Fab Facts? Nothing to do with First Action Bureau, just fabulous facts, contracted down to Fab Facts, because hopefully the fact I'm about to give you from a book will be fab.
Is
Richard,
fab,
I'm going to start flicking. Are you ready to shout fab to stop me?
Go on then.
Here we go.
Fab.
Oh, gosh,
Hey.
you did it again where you nearly waited till the very end of time.
Sorry.
Because, these Fab Facts are presented chronologically.
Okay.
Anyway, okay, here we go, Richard. This is one for you. It's quite contemporary
Oh, good.
and has some interesting bits and bobs for you. Well, because you don't
Yes.
like the old ones.
No, I don't know. I'm all about the now.
Always have been.
Yeah.
Always will be. And that's why you never mention Space Precinct.
Never.
No.
Never
Anyway,
mention
this
it.
is not about Space Precinct. This is about Mystery Science Theatre 3000.
Oh, yes.
Probably a series that's better known by American listeners, but it does have fans around the world. Do you know MST3K, Richard? I'm just using its, familiar name there.
How very young of you.
Thank you very much.
I mean, I've heard of it. I've never seen any of it, but I guess it's on YouTube and things, and I see the odd mention of it on social media.
It's on Netflix, and I will get to that in a moment.
is
But
it?
I've only
Right.
seen bits and pieces, you see, so I'm included in one of the people who probably don't know. So for me and others, MST3K involves a man and his two robot friends forced by mad scientists to watch the worst movies ever made.
Okay.
They survive this ordeal by making fun out of what they're having to watch. It's a lovely idea, isn't it? A great fun
Yes.
little central piece.
Yeah.
So it ran originally from 1988 to 1999, good sci-fi date there, on Comedy Central and the Sci-Fi Channel. Now, there was more recently a brief Netflix revival, 2017 to 2018 as well. When the show first started on a little tiny local station in Minneapolis, they couldn't afford to buy in films specifically for the show, so they basically had to make do with whatever films were in the station library already. Now, as luck would have it, Richard James,
Yes.
the channel actually had in its library the Super Space Theatre package of Anderson films. I say films because I'm putting them in air quotes because it was just bolted together episodes.
Yeah.
So, for the very, very first episode of Mystery Science Theatre, they watched Invaders from the Deep. Invaders from the Deep was the kind of squished together 4 episodes of Stingray.
Yes.
For the second episode, they watched Revenge of the Mysterons from Mars. So that's 4 episodes of Captain Scarlet. For the 10th episode, Cosmic Princess. Well, that was 2 episodes of Space 1999, focusing on Maya, Catherine Schell. Now, once the series settled into a rhythm of making fun of movies that actually deserved it, rather than just ones that were accessible, they still made references to Anderson stuff, mostly Thunderbird, Stingray and Supercar, amongst the other jokes and comments they throw around the screen. However, the Anderson connection runs even deeper than just references.
Does it?
Yeah, because during season 2, 2 more minor characters were added to work in the mad scientist's lair.
Right.
A pair of mole people.
Right. Okay.
They were based on the titular characters from the 1965 Universal International Monster movie. I don't know that one, do you?
No, I don't know.
Well, we'll have to go and look it up. These 2 mole people were named Gerry and Sylvia.
Oh, come on. Really?
Yes, as a nod to the creators of the films that launched the series in the first place.
Oh, wow.
So, well, I mean, you say wow, however, those characters appeared on and off for the next couple of years, but never really amounted to much.
Oh.
And they were finally phased out during season 3 of Mystery Science Theatre when everyone got fed up of putting on the hot costumes that were involved in portraying the mole people.
God, yeah.
Because it made them melt under the studio lights. It's something I'm sure you're familiar with. Still, it's rather a nice little nod to Anderson stuff because we don't always get that from the Americans. Now,
No,
it's
that's
worth
sweet, isn't it?
saying that the creator and original star of MST3K, Joel Hodgson, acknowledged the kind of ongoing Anderson connection, because our dear friend Randomiser General, Randomiser Pope himself,
Oh yes, all hail the Dale.
Chris
Yes.
Dale, wrote an article on the Gerry Anderson website all about MST3K and its connection to the worlds of Anderson. And Joel Hodgson tweeted us and said, thanks for the shout out. Yes, Gerry Anderson and Derek Meddings had a strong and dreamlike influence on MST.
Oh, amazing.
So there you
Isn't
go.
that lovely?
Yes.
Yeah, great. I mean, were they kind to the various Anderson shows they watched? Do you know?
Well, I think for the fact that they were limited to what they could access in those early days, but to fit with the theme of being trapped and forced to watch awful things, they probably had to be a bit cruel. I haven't seen them, but definitely worth investigating, and I sort of want to go and watch them now.
Yes. Do you mind that when people, rib the Gerry Anderson legacy a little bit? I mean,
course not. I mean, I
famously,
do it.
Team America did it. Well, yes.
I do it when it comes to Joe Knight all the time.
Yes,
of course,
yes.
You can't be precious about these things, for goodness sake.
No, that's true. And also, many of them, of course, were of their time. And, things do change. And perhaps looking back, certain attitudes and even all the effects, and stuff, sometimes look a little bit out of time, don't they? Sound a bit risible sometimes.
Oh, totally.
I'm choosing my words very carefully.
You are. That's not saying, to quote Dad on the 2004 Thunderbirds film, the biggest load of crap I've ever seen in my life.
Right, exactly.
Yes, I'm sure people feel like that about many Anderson shows, and they're totally entitled to feel that way and to make their feelings known. Joe 90. Anyway, that's a nice little note of something which is not usual fare for the worlds of Anderson, but does take us into kind of cult fame in the USA.
Yes.
So thank you to Joel and the teams of MST3K. I think that's the end of this one, Richard, don't you?
Oh, I think so, Jamie.
Good. Then that brings us to the end of this week's
Mystery Fact. Yay! Great. That's interesting, isn't it? Now, we do have, I know, people in America who have discovered the work of Gerry Anderson over the past few years if they didn't sort of see it originally. We learnt there that many people's first experience of Gerry Anderson shows would have come through programmes like Mystery Science Theatre 3000. So what other ways, how often were Gerry Anderson shows shown in the US? Or were they like Space Precinct, bedeviled by very late broadcast slots in the middle of the morning and so on?
I mean, the problem with the US broadcast system traditionally was syndication. So if you weren't syndicated across networks across the country, then it was down to individual deals in individual states or areas.
Right.
And sometimes you wouldn't get many deals. So then barely anybody would see it. And then it just didn't have the kind of mass appeal and sort of reaching that critical mass amongst the public and the public consciousness.
Yeah.
So, I think really, I think Fireball XL5 was the last one to be properly syndicated. Space 1999 did pretty well, but things like Thunderbirds, loads of states, loads of areas just didn't have it at all.
Yeah.
So,
But now, of course, with streaming, I suppose it's more available than it ever has been worldwide, isn't it?
Well, particularly in the US, if you want to go and watch it for free, you can go and watch it on Shout Factory TV. And if you want to watch it in the UK, you can watch it on BritBox.
Yeah, great.
Oh, there's my little deaf dog there shaking his head and making a noise. Sorry. Ernie's gone totally deaf now, bless him.
Yeah. Oh, sweet. Bless him.
Anyway, yes, it's very easy to watch it now. It wasn't easy to watch it then, and but thanks to people like the guys on MST, because it means that they got wider recognition.
Yeah, brilliant.
In a weird way.
Jamie, I think that's enough of us. I think we really need to hear from the people that this podcast is really all about.
Oh, yes.
Our listeners.
Absolutely, the Podsterons.
Yes, now they have been emailing, of course, to podcast@gerryanderson.co.uk. For example, this one from Alex Brogan. Now, this is a strange one, Jamie. It's an audio file, which we love. And Alex said, hi, this clip may work best with some clangers background music added. Kind regards, Alex. Would you like to hear something a little odd?
Oh, do I have a choice?
No, here it is.
Okay.
This is the voice of the Mysterons. We know you can hear us, Earthmen. Our retaliation will be slow, but nonetheless effective. It will mean the ultimate destruction of life on Earth. It'll be useless for you to resist, for we have discovered the secret of reversing matter, as you have just witnessed. Of course, one of you will be under our control. You will be instrumental in avenging the Mysterons. Our first act of retaliation will be to assassinate your world president.
Well, what about that?
What an interesting approach to that introduction.
I think what he's done there is that he's taken the Mistrons introduction to Captain Scarlet and the Mistrons, but done it in the style of the voiceover for the Clangers.
A match made in heaven, one might say.
Absolutely. Interestingly enough, I see on the file name here is audio recording 28, which sort of implies that you had 27 goes first.
Oh.
Did you, Alex? Is that right? Before you felt you got the pièce de résistance?
Yeah, Alex, but please send us the bloopers.
Yes, that was very good. Thanks, Alex. Also, Emma Nichols got in touch to say, "Hi, Jamie and Richard. I'm excited because my niece, who is only 1 year old, has started to watch the original Thunderbirds. To hear from my sister, well, that just brings back memories to when I was only 3 years old and watching Thunderbirds reruns like Terror in New York City, just to name one of them. I'm a proud Thunderbirds fan right now," from Emma Nichols. Very good to hear. Also, we've got this from Ian Plowman, who says, "Hi, Chris and Jamie."
Oh, is that the most awkward opening to an email we've ever had, I think?
He goes on, "I've recently acquired the complete Terrorhawks on DVD.
Hooray!
The episode on the discs seemed to be listed in production order. Now, I believe they were broadcast in a different order, so what's the best way to view them?" He says, "By the way, I'm really enjoying them, and I only recently rediscovered them through the Big Finish audios. Thanks in advance, Ian Plowman."
Yes, I mean,
I'm not going to get involved because obviously that's not to me. So,
because I'm surprised you read it out, to be honest.
Yeah.
Well, Ian and Chris, and not Richard. Chris will be best placed to answer this, but really, as long as you watch Expect the Unexpected parts 1 and 2 first, which set up the series, after that, you can watch them in whatever order until you reach series 3. Obviously, you want to get 2 for the price of 1 first there, when Its Star is born. But otherwise, it wasn't made to be viewed as a serial like that. So, whether you want to do it in broadcast order or production order, I'd say it's up to you, really.
Yeah, interesting, isn't it? And again, another example of someone coming to the TV versions of the show, the originals, you might say, via the Big Finish audios.
Isn't it funny
the way of doing it?
Yeah, isn't it funny the way people arrive at these things? I mean, that's a bit like Eric, who emailed us a few weeks ago, who got to Space 1999 via the audio version of Breakaway first.
That's right. Yeah,
and I'm sure many others who've kind of found their entry point to Anderson stuff through books or comics or Mystery Science Theatre 3000.
Well, yeah, indeed. Now, also, Erin Laverick got in touch to say, "Dear Jamderson," or should it be Richie? So I like that because she's trying to combine the two of us there, you see, and I did at least get half a mention.
Cheers to that.
Yeah. Erin says, "I have spent the past year slowly catching up on all the episodes of the Gerry Anderson podcast from pod 1, to the present day. I realise there have been others who've done it much quicker than I, but in my defence, I have quite an extensive list of other podcasts to also catch up on." Well, that's fair enough.
No, fair enough, yeah.
Yeah, she says, "Sorry, there's just so many amazing podcasts out there. I can't be loyal to just one." That's okay, Erin. We weren't expecting you to be loyal. Finally, she says, "I am now listening to the podcasts in the week they're released, which is a strange experience." As a 90s kid, I was first introduced to Thunderbirds, Captain Scarlet and Stingray through the reruns on the BBC. We were a very Thunderbirds house. My mum and brother even built the Blue Peter Tracy Island, which combined with our toys of the Thunderbirds equaled hours of fun. We only actually had the film Thunderbirds Are Go on video, which we rewatched loads. The Cliff Richard scene being a favourite and still is. Years later, as a teenage fan of Busted, the theme for the Thunderbirds film became very heavily played. And in more recent times, my mum and I have slowly worked through the entirety of Thunderbirds again on DVD, a favourite episode being Vault of Death.
Good choice.
And a happy discovery being Thunderbird 6. She goes on to say, "Discovering the podcast was a very happy accident, and I've loved hearing all the behind-the-scenes information of my favourite Super Marination series, as well as learning about the many Gerry Anderson shows and films of which I previously knew nothing. When I find the time, I'm excited to hopefully start watching a few, particularly Space 1999. Joe 90 to see if it is as annoying as Jamie says, and of course Space Precinct to finally see the great Officer Orin in action. I even have a dangerous curiosity to watch Torchy." I mean, Erin, that's going beyond the Call of Duty. Anyway, she says, "I'm trying not to send a ridiculously long email, too late, but I will end up by saying, I really look forward to the new podcast every week with its FAB Facts, brilliant randomiser, and hilarious banter. Keep up the amazing work, FAB, SIG, 1010, etc. Erin Laverick.
What a
you
lovely
very much for
email.
that. Yep, that was great. Thanks, Erin. And great to see that you've retained your love of all things Anderson through your life there. That's lovely, isn't it? When people grow up with these things and then start to revisit them in later years as well. That's always very nice.
It really is. And also still finding that you've got loads of things to experience for the first time.
Yes,
Even
quite
Joe
right
90.
too. Yeah, or First Action Bureau.
Oh, well, of course, yes.
Yes.
Yeah, even more
the
stuff.
story isn't over yet, is it?
No, it keeps going and going.
Yeah.
And going.
Great.
Just like the podcast.
Just like the podcast. Yes. There we are.
Right, Richard, would you like to hear some news from in and around the Gerry Anderson universe?
Yes, please.
Good. Then we'll do that now in what has become known as the Gerry Anderson News.
Genius.
So this is, Richard, the...
News.
Correct, from the Gerry Anderson universe. Let's get started right now. So the day of release today of this podcast episode is the 14th of September, a very important date in the Gerry Anderson calendar because it's the day after Breakaway Day. Perhaps Breakaway Day is more important, but it's not the 13th of September today. On the day of release it's the 14th. However, to celebrate Breakaway Day 2020, we did release some rather lovely Breakaway Day t-shirts. Now, they are only available until 23:59 hours. That's UK time, on the 15th of September. So you haven't grabbed one already, then I strongly suggest you do that and grab one before it breaks away.
Like it.
They are available exclusively from the Gerry Anderson store, shop.gerryanderson.co.uk. It seems to be a month for anniversaries, or especially a week for anniversaries, because on Wednesday, the 16th of September, it's the 50th anniversary of UFO. Amazing.
Oh, exciting.
50 years old, another 50th anniversary, incredible stuff. And to celebrate that, we've got a new range released from the Gerry Anderson store. You may already have seen the Lieutenant Ellis range featuring Gabrielle Drake. Well, now to add to that, we've got a UFO target design, UFO schematic, and a Harlington Straker Studios range.
Great.
So if you want to have a bit of an in-joke and wear your Harlington Straker Studios gear, then this could be the range for you. Also, for those anniversaries, we may have some bits and pieces on the Gerry Anderson YouTube channel and beyond, so keep an eye out there.
Oh, yeah.
First Action Bureau, well, we keep mentioning that, so sorry to mention it again, but we're quite excited about it.
Yes.
It's coming very soon. If you haven't already subscribed, then please search for First Action Bureau on your podcast app of choice and subscribe immediately. You'll find on there a trailer and also a little chat with me and Nick Briggs about the 5 things that you can expect from First Action Bureau, give you a nice little introduction to the series and what's going on there.
Well, I'm sure we're all looking forward to that.
And there'll be another little teaser out this week, so Thursday the 17th. So make sure you're subscribed to get hold of that. And also, on Facebook, if you could go to facebook.com/First Action Bureau, all spelt out, FIRSTACTIONBUREAU, then we'd love it if you would like that page too. There's about 500 people who've liked it already, which is amazing for a new podcast that isn't even out. So thank you in advance if you've done that, and thank you in advance if you're going to do that. Finally, as usual, you may want to check out all the exciting stuff on our YouTube channel. There have been some recent lovely uploads and free episodes and FAB Facts and all that sort of stuff. youtube.com/Gerry Anderson TV. I probably missed out some crucial stuff, but for now, that's the end of this week's Gerry Anderson News.
That was the news.
Fantastic. I'm glad you enjoyed all that so much.
Yeah, very exciting.
It always is, Richard James.
Well,
I think that's what you'll find.
Every week. I can't believe we do this weekly, Jamie. Every week. And there's always Gerry Anderson news.
Well, yes. I mean, we've just had Breakaway Day, of course,
yes,
as mentioned. So make sure, actually, I'm going to remind you again now that the Breakaway T-shirt is still available for the next day or two. And otherwise, it'll be gone again for this year. So don't miss out on that. But September is one of those months when everything happens.
Yes,
it's Thunderbird's Day, there's 50th anniversaries, UFO obviously in a couple of days' time, Space 1999 Breakaway, your daughter's birthday, right. Yes, and then we pushed First Action Bureau's release just to one day after the 1st of October because September was so busy.
Yes, quite right too.
It's going to be a busy end to the year, I think. Anyway, What else have you got for us from around the Podsteron universe, Dickie James?
Well, now, you are listening to the Gerry Anderson podcast. I am Richard James, and that is Jamie Anderson.
Hello.
And we are joined, as ever, by our marvellous Podsterons, and they've been super busy over on the Facebook group. It's very easy to join in the fun if you want to. Just head on over to facebook.com/groups/Podsterons, answer a few questions, and you'll be let in, and you can join in with their live streams and their quizzes, their meme fun, their gift games, all sorts of stuff going on there. I've really no idea what I'm talking about. It's all very great fun. And, for example, Lauren has posted that I caught up with my pods again while making curtains. I'm enjoying the banter and laughing at Chris's comments during the randomisers. Wonder what the big news is on the 3rd. Ah, yes, she posted this a while ago. Well, now you know, Lauren. Thanks for making these entertaining podcasts, FAB. Eric posted, so most of you all know I'm really new to the worlds of Anderson. I think I found Scarlet back in February or March through a combination of Big Finish and the fashion world, believe it or not. Yes, Eric, we've discussed that already. He goes on to say, I discovered the podcast not long after through the Benji and Nick show. Never heard of it.
Never heard of
it. He says, no, through the podcast, I've met all the other series and all of you wonderful Podsterons. It's been quite a ride. Today, however, I finally had some time to put some of my small but nice beginner's collection of merch together, and I thought I'd share. And yes, I still have more on the way. And he posted some pictures there, including some of the Thunderbirds books that have been so popular over the last few months.
Yes.
And various toys and dolls as well that he's found online. Jack McMorrow says, is it true that on his commentary for Thunderbirds 2004, Jonathan Frakes basically spends 90 minutes saying sorry? Well, of course, Andrew Clements, had to get involved and says, no, that's completely false. He gives a fascinating insight into the production of the film, and it's well worth a listen. So there we are. I mean, what has he got to apologise for? He's just doing a job of work, surely.
Absolutely. I mean, he's not entirely responsible for how terrible it was.
Not entirely. And finally, Jonathan Westall posted, I've added some pins to my bag after receiving the Spectrum one yesterday.
Ooh.
And I've also got a Thunderbird 2 case for my phone now as well.
Lovely.
There, great. And he's got a lovely picture there of his bag, festooned with Gerry Anderson pin badges.
Oh, we love a good festooning, don't we?
Well, don't we just, yeah. So do pop on over to the Facebook group and join in the fun. And if you're lucky, I'll read out one of your comments in the next pod.
Yeah. Please do festoon us with your presence.
Look forward to it.
I'm trying to work out if we can do another FAB acronym with festoon.
Yes, okay.
I'll work on that through this
right.
the rest of this episode.
Look forward to it.
Now, have you got any more stuff, Richard James?
No, a little later on we'll be heading on over to Twitter, where a few people have been tagging us, Gerry Anderson podcast, over the last week or so, and hearing what they've been posting about over there.
Oh, okay. Well, that's great.
Yes.
So to get us there, shall we hand over to someone who worked with Dad for a long time?
Yes.
And who we heard from a bit last week.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to hear from more now and a bit more the following week.
Right.
Yeah? I mean, that man's name is Mark Woollard.
Ah.
And he worked with Dad across 3 decades. And he's got some more stuff to tell us. So let's go over to Mark right now.
Good.
Now, Ben Tuchinski was conned into dressing up as the Spirilla. Did anything like that befall you on your time there? Did you end up being someone's hands or have to, mix up some gunk for an alien or anything like that? Or was it just pretty bog standard FX messing around and drinking beer?
Well, first of all, Ben Tuchinski wasn't coerced into doing that. He wanted to do that. Yeah. He begged for the opportunity. But no, I mean, apart from that little sequence I just talked about, that's about as much as I would get into doing that sort of thing. Later on, when I was doing commercials with your dad, when he was moved to MPC, there's very often, because we were working together, and very often we'd get the storyboards, and as a visual cue, what I'd do is he'd film me acting out a piece of the action so that we could then put it on a time-coded piece of footage, and I could work back through it and I could mimic what I'd been doing. And on occasion, we'd get somebody in like Lionel Blair to do kind of dance pieces. But occasionally I was doing that. But it was all very much not to be seen by the public because that was a death, worth and fate, that was.
Gosh, yeah, I could just imagine you doing a bit of a Lionel Blair-style dance routine, Mark.
He had to do it coming down some stairs. I'd have broken my neck.
That was for Archie the skeleton, was it? That's
right.
The VHS ads. So, okay, so you followed Dad. He did that thing where he worked with somebody for a while, and obviously he didn't think you were too much of a, tosser, and so kind of stuck with you, and you carried on working with him, and obviously the feeling there was mutual. So this is post Dick Spanner. What was the path like then, and how was he doing then? Because he had hoped for this big resurgence of Terrorhawks. It had done okay, and he got his Rolls Royce again, which is kind of what he wanted. But I feel like, especially in the late 80s, there was a sense from him that was like, I should be doing better than this.
Yeah. I mean, I think we all thought we should as well. I mean, there's still unique stuff coming out of the, Gerry Anderson stable. And obviously with Dick Spanner, that was something completely left field, but it was, successful because it was just a comedy delivery system. And we were all involved in doing that. And we did it for Funpunts again in a mezzanine hut in the back of Pinewood Studios with the wind howling through it and the sets blowing around, which is why they all jig all over the place. I mean, I'd done stop frame before, but not a lot. Steve had done the original stop frame for the pilot, but then we needed to have 2 units. So I was given the opportunity to do one, and Mark Harris did the other for animation. Mark is a particularly good animator, though he would probably never admit to it. But we did a whole bunch of stuff with that. And then your dad was down a lot more and getting involved, and, Terry was directing, Steve was lighting. And when we were at the end of getting towards the end of Dick Spanner, Gerry got an opportunity to do this. Oh, no, it was Grays, I think, developed a character around the Dick Spanner-like countenance called Lieutenant. And we moved into doing pretty expensive commercials then. I mean, your dad had done some commercials prior to that. I think he'd done the Silhouette commercial for ladies. Yeah,
for sanitary products, yes.
And did one for the bank, the Scottish Bank.
Yeah, the Royal Bank of Scotland, the shoes one, which was an award winner, wasn't it?
Yeah, exactly. So he'd kind of, that was bubbling up, and he'd been getting known more and more as somebody who could do this, and obviously brought a different look to things, and especially if they're effects related. So when we started doing Lieutenant commercials, that started getting his head above the parapet as far as people noticing what he was doing, and he got headhunted by the Moving Picture Company. So he had Gerry Anderson kind of Productions doing his own commercials, and then they made him an offer he couldn't refuse. So he started working with them, and mainly he was doing stop motion commercials, and so he offered me opportunities there as well, and Terry Adlam. And so it was great because we was when your dad was in the Green Man, he'd have to pitch for the commercial, so we'd go along and sit with him, and he'd tell us what the brief was, and then we'd all get in there and start pitching away to try and win the commercial, because we knew if Gerry got it, then he never said you would get a job, but he'd say possibility was that we could work on it depending how things went. It's always very honest, your dad. He'd never blow smoke up you. He's always saying, like, this is it. This is no guarantees, but if I get it, then there's a good chance you're going to be on it. So, but he didn't know what was going to be the outcomes of these things when he got them anyway. So we went along there in good faith, and we tossed in some of our ideas. So I think on the first one I remember doing was the Archie one, where it was like a big World Cup football one, and I think Terry had the idea of the parrot. That's right, it's a parrot that Archie picks up and shapes as a rattle. And I had the idea that he was looking on a mezzanine level, like he's up in the stands looking down. And Gerry just kind of put them in, wrote the background around it, and then got it to the agency, and they loved it, and we went with it. So we all had a little bit of creative input, but we all enjoyed. I certainly enjoyed the experience, and that went on for me for quite some time. So Terry wasn't doing it so much after a few of those, but I was always kind of over for a meeting with your dad about the new commercial came up, and I think that's what cemented, our experience. And I'd like to think we became friends doing it as well around about that time. But he was always a director, but I was kind of like his hands and manipulating things. There was other animators involved as well, but I was always involved in the process somehow. So yeah, when he got some awards and he got headhunted by NPC, he went along to work for them doing commercials, and he was given a producer called Sloan Hickman. I say given. I don't know if there's much choice in it for him. He was their best commercials producer, and he did a few commercials with Sloan, but then I think they had a bit of a falling out, although there was a bit of wasn't a meeting of minds. And so Mark Sherwood, who was the production manager at NPC at the time, was given the opportunity to work with Gerry. So that's when Mark became Gerry's producer.
Another Mark,
yeah. And of course, Mark was a long-time compatriot of Gerry's and friend, and he also He went on to Space Precinct. He was a producer of visual effects for Space Precinct. So again, we worked with Gerry, but also we ended up being friends with Gerry. It always happened, and I was friends with Mark, and always have been, and still have now. But but that was at that time. It was the kind of when we were doing Spanner. I think that was another low point. I mean, your dad had come out from a crazy time after Space 1999, and he went through a lot of emotional turmoil, and so Terrorhawks was the beginning of the upswing, which kind of went, and then, as you say, Spanner went down, and then the commercials started to lift him up a bit, and I think that made him, give him another sense of purpose. And of course, by then he had already got to the point where he'd done Space Police, and he knew he had that in his back pocket, and he was struggling, trying to get that going, and that was 5 years worth of dedication on his part, trying to get it up and going, but eventually made it into Space Precinct. So that's when he popped up. In the meantime, we did things like the commercials we did were mostly based around sanitary products, because we started doing Domestos and the toilet duck and
I remember those.
And he got known as, I don't know if he got known, but he kept getting the same stuff. So it was interesting that we kind of cornered that market, whatever that market was, for a period of time.
Yeah, I don't know what that would be. I've still got the stop motion rigged Dom, the Domestos bottle.
One that squashes out, or
with his sort of investigator's jacket and fedora and all that. He's seen better days.
Yeah, that was based on a lieutenant, on a Dick Spano, kind of like a throughput of kind of ideology there.
Yeah,
but that was all fun. That was great fun. Bob Bell was involved in all that as well, as he was art director for a lot of it. And Terry Adam was always there. Mark Harris was always there. Steve was usually always there.
Same gang.
Yeah,
nice family feel.
It was, and we did I remember Gerry got this opportunity to do the background visuals for a theatrical thing called Return to Forbidden Planet, which was quite amusing because I was around. Mark Harris had a VHS of Forbidden Planet because we were going to have a meeting around your dad's house, so we all turned up and it was just me and Mark and your dad talking about how we were going to do the visuals. I think Steve was busy at the time, otherwise he'd have been involved with it as well, I'm sure, because it was a big visual effects thing. And this obviously was called, on the poster, it was called Return to Forbidden Planet, Shakespeare's last comedy, or last comedy dance movie, or something like that. It was very obvious. It was kind of like supposed to be a bit amusing. And I'm not sure what your dad thought about it, but Mark pulled the VHS out and put it in there. And because it was made in 1956, I think your dad was kind of thinking, it's going to be like a pony piece of toots. Of course, he came up in cinemascope and in colour. And then he said, it's in colour. What's it? I said, have a look at this. And all this visual effects started going. He was unaware of it totally. It's like, bloody hell, this is far beyond, is this what they want? And we say, no, we think it's a comedy. We think it's a comedy show because of the nature of the poster. He said, oh, God, blimey, I've got to. So anyway, it turned out it was totally a comedy. And it won the Laurence Olivier Award for Best Musical. But we supplied the backgrounds, and I had to do some star pass, kind of like star tunneling, multi-plane stuff for the stars, which I hadn't done before. Steve had done it, and I'd seen him do it, so I had to kind of do that. And then there was a sequence where we had to have this multi-tentacled monster on a landscape. And Mark got, I don't know if you're familiar with a thing called a boglin, which is like a hand puppet. It looked like a big germ. He can manipulate its mouth from the inside, and he put it on a bucket, and he covered the bucket in expanding foam and put tentacles on it, which we put wires on, and it just waggled, and it looked as pony as you would like. And we had to shoot this. We shot it, and with the idea that it was, very cheap and very nasty, but still comedic. And when I went to see the play, people were rolling about with the laughter. It was obviously Dad got the credit on it, and I think people were expecting something kind of highfalutin, but it was quite amusing. It was a good experience, that as well.
Yeah, anything more highbrow than that wouldn't have fitted, I don't think, with the show. So it was a perfect fit.
Shakespeare's Last Rock and Roll Opera, it's called. Last Rock and Roll. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, no, I remember it happening and things around that time. When was that, like 89?
There must be something like that.
Yeah, summertime.
It was just before... was it just before Batman? Was that right? When Batman came out?
Well, so... Yeah, I guess it must have been, but around that time, would also have been when the guys were doing the Thunderbird stage show and John Gore approached Dad and they had to do a really quick turnaround advert. Were you involved in that?
I was on that, yeah. I lit it. So what happened at the time, we were trying to get another series of Dick Spanner going. So Terry and I were working out of another mezzanine hut on Bray Studios, mezzanine hut, for Thumpence with Bob Bell. And I was lighting it this time. So your Dad had this opportunity to get this thing done quick and dirty. So, yeah, one of the guys turned up with I think it was a Thunderbird 2 hat. And it was basically, he just had to look like, he's facing windward as if he was flying as a Thunderbird 2. And then you couldn't see him underneath because he was screened out. And then as the thing turned to camera, then we revealed the fact that he was wearing this hat. And then it was a big reveal for the upcoming theatre act they were doing. But we had to get it done overnight, literally. We had to go in there, had to light it. I hadn't lit anything as big as that before. We did it at MPC Studios. They had their own stage there, a little studio. And, yeah, that was fun. But we just about got it out. And it's the first time I've actually seen your Dad editing on a 4-plate.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So blinking fast. Obviously, he'd been a sound editor beforehand, and obviously, it was just like, he knew exactly what he was doing, putting this, wrenching the stuff around, cutting it, splicing it, whacking it together. And it was like, I defy anybody to do it with non-linear editing now any quicker. It was really quite something to behold. But yeah,
wow. That was probably the last time he ever edited film, I would imagine, on that. So you witnessed something momentous.
That's a good, interesting time, that was.
Wow. But, okay, yeah. So take us to the adverts then onwards to the next big thing for you and your Anderson Association, Mark.
So I was working hand in glove with Gerry on doing the commercials, and then Space Precinct started. The fuse got lit. So your Dad moved on to start working with Mentor to try and get that moving. And so effectively what happened was they had a hole in their lineup where animation director usually sat. So Mark Sherwood got me promoted into that position. So I started shooting commercials and idents for MPC as a director. This was my first kind of directing break, really. So I was busily trying to get into stop motion right on the cusp when CG started to come in. And therefore, lots of the commercials, instead of going stop motion, they were starting to go CG, but they were still doing some bits and pieces and getting by. But what happened then? In between commercials, your Dad did ask me to go and work on Space Police to run the workshop, the Space Precinct, but I was still doing commercial stuff, but I could see that it was already starting to dry up. So later on, Steve, I think I asked Steve if there was any positions on there, and I actually ended up in a model shop working on Space Precinct, just making craft and models for the for the stage. So that was another interesting experience, because that was poor Steve was dropped right in the middle of that. There's quite a few teething problems at the front end of that. One of which was obviously from the get-go, to set the scene of this new universe, Steve had to shoot the new universe, and it would take time to make one. And so there's a lot of rushing around trying to get things ready, and then trying to crack the techniques that would be used. And Steve was using the Magic Model Company to do the CG effects, and that was another, the marrying of two techniques. So that was a big, hard ask. And of course, turnarounds on each episode were killer. So there was a lot of work for Steve to do, a lot of stuff for us to make. Bill Pearson, the late dearly departed Bill Pearson, was the head of the model shop, and he's a phenomenal sci-fi model maker.
Absolutely.
And so a lot of the guidance about how things what they would look like, because they had to be done so quickly, would come from a bit of Steve and a bit of Bill, and the best models came from Bill, really, because he was unique. But there was a lot of really good model makers in there. There was who were knocking stuff out all the time, and gave it the look and feel of this kind of complex, brave new world, as it were. But again, we had a good time on that. It was good fun. It wasn't quite as good fun as Terrorhawks, but it was still good fun. I think Steve was
different. But do you think part of that was because you were split between two studios? I mean, the model and effects team, you were at Shepperton. The rest of the guys were at Pinewood. I always, even as a kid, thought that's weird. Why are they all locked away?
Well, I think there was one of the reasons was, I'm not sure what stage space was like, but there was always the lure of the Bray bar, but we weren't in Bray, we were in Shepperton. The Shepperton bar was luring us. But I think there was we needed stages of a certain size, I think, for Steve, and I don't know, maybe there was a certain sense of that. I don't really know what the machinations were beyond that, because by the time I joined it, it would have been kind of set up. But it was because of the turnarounds, really. I think there was the quickness of having to, if you're doing shots, with back winds, where basically the shot's in the can, as soon as you put the can into processing, that's your shot. What was happening with Space Precinct was, of course, you'd be shooting some element here and some element there, and it had to be combined at a later date, which kicked it down the road a bit, and then you still needed to do a lot more footage to flesh out that shot, that angle. And, it was hard work for the guys that were dealing with it, and hard work for someone like Mark Sherwood as well, who was getting all the loose ends and having to put them together in post-production. So, it was. I'm not sure how many times it had been done. I do remember going out. I was sent out with the models to the American Producers Film Market.
Yeah.
Where your dad went out there as well, and some of the actors. And I remember, I think I'd seen the first cut of the first episode, and we were out there to try and sell more, get more territories. And I was kind of handling they had the big Space Precinct model and everything, sticking on it, making the lights flash when people walk past it. And that night in the hotel, when I arrived, it was the first showing of Star Trek Voyager, and the opening sequences came, and I thought, oh well, we're a bit buggered here. Because that looks flawless and cinematic. It looked like it was doing something that we would never achieve, because it had a lot of money spent on it. I mean, you could see where we were doing something that looked like it had a lot of money spent on it that I don't think it had. And it had, but in comparison to the big Americans, it was harder to reach that level.
Yeah. I think the money went to places where maybe it shouldn't have done as well. I mean, Steve, whenever I ask him about the model work in Space Precinct, he always says, it's not my best, I don't really like it. I mean, I think it looks great. The vast majority of it looks awesome, especially the cityscape stuff, the night things, they're great. I mean, how do you feel about them looking at them now?
Well, to be honest with you, he was doing a lot of stuff with wires and backgrounds, and marrying it up. To be honest with you, there's some startlingly good stuff in there, absolutely as good as you'd ever seen. And then there was other stuff that maybe had to be done a little bit more quickly, and maybe there wasn't time, or there was, sometimes it probably had to set up on the side of the stage to do a little kind of connecting shot, which didn't have the time spent on it. Some of the other stuff was, but nonetheless, I defy anybody to have done the amount of shots. And it's the quantity of shots that you have to look at, and the general level of them. And there may be some ones that he wasn't particularly proud of, but I think, the wedge of good stuff is right up the top. It's some really lovely stuff in there, especially for the time. Again, it's like, it didn't have motion control. Well, we did have motion control, but you can only get about half a dozen, shots out a week. When for the motion control shots to be, incorporated in there, they spent ages doing them. So you had to be very judicious about what he was choosing to do. But that was the first time that kind of hybrid system was really being pushed together into a British TV show. So it was trailblazing even then.
Yeah, and still using techniques that he'd been messing around with on things from Space Police and probably even back to Terrorhawks. Certainly, when you said about having, little people that combine into the model shots, there's a lot of that.
Yeah.
And also a lot of kind of complex central model things put into sets. I mean, some great kind of combination work.
I mean, some stuffy shots. He always used to want to, if he could, shoot outside, because he, loved the Lit by God look. And I think there's one of them. There's a big pyramid, Pyromania.
Yeah.
Shot outside. It looks amazing. It's like the liftoff sequence in Doppelganger. It's got that authenticity about it.
Yeah.
I defy anybody who didn't know it was a model. If they looked at it out of context, they would think, well, it's a building somebody's built, or it looked that good. And of course, he always loved his rubber dust. So whenever there was a bang going off, he'd always use the rubber dust, which he discovered in Terrorhawks days, to make those voluminous kind of petrochemical bangs go off.
Yeah,
there'd always be something falling down with a clang and a big whip of cabling or something. So he's still using the same setups and same things he'd learnt there, and applying it to, and he still does that. If you watch Batman and Bond films, he's still using those techniques whenever you can, I'm sure. But you look at those effects now, and there's a direct lineage between what he was doing in Terrorhawks and Precinct, and now, then the third and fifth scale models it uses on the big stuff, where most people, unless you tapped them on the shoulder and told them how it was done, they would think it was something, think it was all authentic.
Yeah, there's some fantastic stuff there. I don't know why he's so down about it, but
He's got a BAFTA. Anyway, he doesn't need to be there. He can retire.
That's true. Well, he's also got an honorary doctorate, isn't he? So he's Dr. Begg, BAFTA, whatever. So yeah, no, let's ignore him. More Mark Woollard next week, but it will be the final time, mind you. So make sure you listen in and enjoy. And next week we'll be getting on to all sorts of things, new Captain Scarlet. In fact, Richard, a couple of weeks ago you mentioned you were thinking about the difficulties of directing CG animation, that kind of thing. Well, Mark goes into great depth about the process of doing that from start to finish, and it is really interesting and probably more steps to it than you thought. There's some great honesty coming up from Mark about the new Captain Scarlet process, as you will have heard then about things like Dick Spanner and working in terrible conditions in a blustery old shed with no money.
Which rings a bell.
I was going to say that somehow feels familiar. Anyway, thank you, Mark. More Mark next week.
Yeah, how interesting. I mean, the thing about Gerry Anderson was he really did inspire people to stick with him, didn't he? I mean, there's Mark working through 3 decades of various projects with Gerry, and there's the likes of Steve Begg and Derek Meddings and Christine Glanville and Mary Turner. People did stick with him through thick and thin, didn't they, a lot of the time?
Yeah, I mean, well, Christine was with Dad for five decades, pretty much. I mean, extraordinary. Amazing, really.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I often say she worked on Space Precinct, and I was in Space Precinct. I don't know if you know that.
What?
But
hang on, stop there.
Well, no. Let's just
right there.
But if I knew now who Christine Glanville, I was a young actor in my early 20s, and I hadn't heard of her, to be honest, and actually, I realise now I missed a bit of a trick, and I could have got to know her a little bit better and heard some more fascinating stories from her.
Well, I did know her, and as a kid, I didn't appreciate everything that she knew and stuff. And I did spend a huge amount of time with her, and it was brilliant. But now, Richard, just because you've mentioned Space Precinct,
well, just the once.
Well, you seem to have mentioned it. So, how are you feeling about the response to Demeter City now it's out?
It's been fantastic, hasn't it? I think people have really enjoyed discovering a hitherto unknown but official Space Precinct story. That's the thing, isn't it? It's not something that I've made up. It's an adaptation of the first pilot episode that was never made or broadcast, written by Paul Mayhew Archer. Yeah. And it's been great fun seeing people walking down the streets of Demeter for the first time in 25 years with me. Lovely.
Yeah, I mean, you say it's not something that you made up. It's something that somebody else made up that you've then adapted. So,
yes,
I mean, all of this stuff is made up somewhere.
Yeah, but because it was made up somewhere else, it feels like it's real,
more official somehow. Yeah,
exactly.
So, if you want to grab a copy of Space Precinct Demeter City and you haven't got it already, then they're currently only available from Amazon as a paperback or ebook. So. Up to you how you get it. They will be available eventually from the Gerry Anderson store. So if you'd like to hold on till then, that's fine. But go and grab it. And if you've got it and enjoyed it, then please do leave us a review.
Yes. Lovely. Talking of which, don't forget to subscribe to your very favourite podcast while you're listening to us on whichever platform that is. And why not leave a rating there and tell the world what you think of us? That's a review/rating for those of us who are just joining us for the first time. And if you are, where have you been?
But I don't know there's nothing else to do these days, is there? Everyone's trapped at home. So
yeah, that's right.
Yes. Anyway, Richard, is there anything from the Twitterverse that you want to share with us?
Of course, because over the past couple of weeks or so, people have been hashtagging us Gerry Anderson Podcast. They've been tagging me, Richard N. James, him, Jamie Anderson, and him. Oh, I can just see his feet disappearing into the loft now. That's Chris Dalek over there as well. So, for example, Lost in Transition tweeted he was preparing for his journey to and from work today over an hour of the Gerry Anderson Podcast with all its related insight, information, history, and hilarity from Jamie Anderson, Chris Dale. Oh, and Richard James and guest. Oh, that's nice. There we are. Saved by the bell. Gary says, excellent pod as always. Interesting interview and a great randomizer. I love a bit of new Captain Scarlet. So this is from a couple of weeks ago. Such a great series. Not too sure about Space Precinct undies. Ooh, Mrs. Lol.
Well, Gary, that's fine. We just know that you won't be buying them. But
exactly,
Officer Orin underpants.
Yeah, we can't wait.
Coming soon.
He finishes by saying the Gerry Anderson Podcast, it's what Mondays were made for. Cheers, Fab Trio. Thank you, Gary. We love it when you tell us what you love about the podcast because it helps us to create new stuff. Also, we don't mind if you tell us what you don't like, as long as you're polite. That's fair enough, isn't it? Just be polite about it.
Yeah, exactly. I'm always very polite about Joe 90, aren't I?
Yeah,
so,
of course you are. Robert got in touch on Twitter to say that he went to the local car boot and look what he just picked up. Yeah, and it was a Space Precinct annual from probably about 1995, I think.
Yes.
Now, I had a little conversation with him on Twitter and asked him exactly how much he'd paid for it, because I thought, well, whatever it was probably too much. And he said, no, I got it for £1. And he says, oddly, there isn't a picture of Officer Castle because it's claimed she's undercover. So I was able to offer Robert a little fab fact of my own.
Oh, were you? Can you tell us what that fab fact was?
Well, I remember the real reason why Simone Mendix didn't appear in the Space Precinct annual was because they hadn't cleared the use of her image with her agents.
Yeah.
Isn't that a silly thing to have done?
I'm amazed that in amongst all of that, especially with the American actors and stuff, that wasn't just a standard part of the contract.
I know. Extraordinary. So Robert responded to that by saying, ooh, well, that's a 20-year or so mystery solved. I would have thought that would have been covered by something in the contract.
Yeah.
However, he says it's in marvellous condition without a single mark on the cover or any of the pages, so I'm going to wrap it up and then put it away. Which led me to think, Podsterons, what do you do with your merch? Specifically your Gerry Anderson merch. What do you do? Play or put away? Let us know. By sending it into podcast@gerryanderson.co.uk or hashtagging us, #Gerry Anderson Podcast over on Twitter. Finally, for example, Nick Draws got in touch to say, I've got the Fab Facts book, the comic collection, and the cross-section book. Get him.
Good selection there.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, so do get in touch with us, hashtag us, tweet us, and we'll read out some of your tweets next time.
I look forward to those.
Yeah.
Can't wait. Do also please remember to search out First Action Bureau on your podcast app of choice, and make sure you've subscribed to that. There's more goodies coming, and obviously the episodes launch from the 1st of October, and you can enjoy that and get to know the Bureau and all the goings on there. We can't hint too much, Richard, but it's quite exciting what happens in the series, isn't it?
Oh, well, yeah. I mean, you can't give anything away, but that scene where I managed to jump off the cliff and sew up my arm, and then I get lifted up by the helicopter and carried over to the oil rig, and then... am I thinking of something else?
I think that's just your everyday life, isn't it?
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah, sorry about that. My mistake.
It's not that exciting, First Action Bureau, I'm afraid. No, lots to look forward to. It's really good. We're very, very proud of it, and hope we're going to enjoy it over the coming weeks. Rich James, something else we're quite proud of is our one of our major contributors to this podcast.
Yes, very proud.
Mr. Christopher Dale III, Esquire.
Indeed.
Version 2.0.
You mean there are two more? Wow. There's a thought.
Well, that is the only explanation for all of the stuff that he puts out in the world. In fact, of course, you will have hopefully recently enjoyed the Making of Breakaway video on our YouTube channel. Yet another Chris Dale production. He's sort of a one-man production company, isn't he?
How does he do it?
I got no idea, but somehow
I hope he's getting very rich on it.
Obviously, yes, as are we all from this podcast, Richard, in our blustery shed with our lollipop and a can of Coke. Right, so every time we have a podcast, we also have a randomiser, and that's when Chris Dale watches a random episode of a random Gerry Anderson thing randomly comments throughout on various randomness within that episode.
Oh, I just got it. That's why it's called the randomiser. Right.
It's due to all that randomness.
Randomness.
Anyway, look, without further random nonsense, let's hand over to Chris, because he knows what he's doing, even if we don't.
You were where?
In the professor's laboratory, sir.
And what, may I ask, were you doing there? Conjuring tricks?
Oh, I'm so sorry, Commander Zero. It's my fault. You see, recently the randomiser's been a bit... well, it's not running as well as it used to. But Professor Matic has just given it a look over, and he tells me that there's probably nothing wrong. It's just a bit of dust in there or something. I do hope I didn't inconvenience you by borrowing Lieutenant 90 to give me a hand with it.
I'll say you did.
I'm sorry, sir. It won't happen again.
You're darn right it won't.
Oh, Commander, how about, in the name of smoothing things over, I ask you to press the button on the randomiser today. How would you feel about that?
It's just great.
Excellent. Well, it's just the big red button right there. That's it. Oh, that's a bit more smoke than it usually puts out.
Something, spaceships. The console's on fire. Put out those flames, Lieutenant, before the whole console goes up.
Yes, sir.
Well, It's never done that before.
You knuckle-headed apology for a spaceman.
Hey, but the good news is Lieutenant 90 managed to put out the fire before it caught the printout, so that's something, at least.
Well?
Lieutenant, did you see which series it is today?
Oh, 90.
Oh, what, Joe 90? Oh, well, that is good news. But which episode?
I can't believe it. 90! Yippee!
Let me take a look at that. Oh, I see. Yes, Lieutenant 90 is obviously very happy that today's episode of Joe 90 is Project 90, but I'm not entirely sure why. Oh, maybe he's just excited at the thought of getting away from you for a bit, Commander Zero, or maybe I should just get on and watch the episode, eh?
Reckon you'd better before I ground you for that remark.
Yes, well, here's Joe 90 with Project 90.
Get out. Leave me in peace. Get out.
It's Joe 90! Ooh, 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 ooh. Yes, come on, get in there, my son. It's a bit of Joe 90! Woo! Is what I'm assuming this episode was not introduced with by our two hosts just then. But I'm very excited to see Joe 90 again, and again, one of my favourite episodes. But I say that about every episode of Joe 90 because this is one of my favourite series, and I don't care if anybody else doesn't like it because I love it to bits anyway. I've waffled over a very nice and just a nice scene of a cable car rolling up to the Dorota Clinic with this lovely music. There's some lovely Barry Gray music in this episode. Another huge office featuring one man sat behind a small desk.
Yes? What is it?
This is Dr. Dorota.
3 new patients have arrived, Doctor.
Get someone to show them around the clinic. I'll see them later.
This is his clinic in the Swiss Alps.
Well, they do help to maintain our cover, sir.
Or is it?
This is the World Intelligence Network's HQ, London. Weston's office, 3rd floor.
Oh.
That's him. Shane Weston. Telescopic lens.
So they've been spying on WN by the look of it.
Louver. We think he's the contact.
Oh, that looks like a flopped photo.
Who's that?
We don't know his connection with WIN, but Louver spends a lot of time at his cottage.
Professor McLean.
His name's McLean.
Just how much do we know, sir?
Very little. That's why I'm assigning you full time to Project 90.
Our reference?
Yes. And theirs.
This is so cool.
Thing we do know. WIN's code name, File 90. And it's something big. We want to know who or what File 90 contains.
So we're back from the opening titles with another lovely stock footage establishing shot of London as we zoom in on Big Ben. And much like with last week with the imposters, this is another episode that I find the strength of this lies in its almost attack on the premise of the show. It's not just here's another routine spy caper. This is something directly targeting the World Intelligence Network. We're seeing some new
has left office and
shots of the exterior of WANHQ, which are quite rare. There's someone pulling up in a laundry van. Curson, for that is the name of the assistant to Dr. Dorota, his sidekick, has just shot a very obvious listening device into Shane Weston's office, and Shane Weston has spotted it instantly. And I love that little bit of puppeteering work there where he's stroking his chin thoughtfully. Oh, that wasn't there earlier.
Send that cable right away. No, wait. You better try to call Washington again first. And see if you can rustle up a cup of coffee, will you? Yes?
And in the laundry van.
They should find it in a day or so.
Lots of listening equipment.
I think we can say Project 90 is off to a good start.
Yeah, I think so too.
Did he say anything else, Joe?
No, Dad. Just said he knew you and kept asking questions.
Harry Kennett?
This wouldn't fly today.
I never met anyone with that name. What sort of questions did he ask you?
Oh, what kind of work you did. Stuff like that.
I see.
He asked me if I knew Sam Louver.
Someone following Joe, following him home, asking him questions.
He went away. Dad, I reckon he was some sort of spy.
A spy?
Oh,
I doubt it.
Joe himself is a spy. He should be able to tell a spy by now.
Can I go out in the garden now?
Yes. Yes, all right.
Yes, do your business out there. Well, he didn't ask if he could play, did he?
Professor, how are you? I'm fine. I think there's something you ought to know.
Go ahead, Professor.
I have feelings for you, Mr. Weston.
Telling me about a man who stopped him outside his school. Said his name was Harry Kennett. Harry Kennett? Yes.
Joe's school, we never see Joe's school in this show. We never see any of his school chums, but that would be probably the most hellish place in the Super Mario Nation universe. Lots of Super Mario Nation kids all over the place. Most of them with female voices.
Right to tell me, with, you-know-what at the cottage.
Shane's trying to play it cool.
Sam and I are going to take a short vacation.
Considering the listening devices in the
Tomorrow morning to talk this over.
corner of the room. Oh, I recognise that tape recorder.
When did this come through?
I think that was Professor Carney's in Codename Europa.
I must have told his father about our little chat as soon as he got home. He couldn't be mixed up in this, could he?
He can't be. He's just a child.
Weston and Luva are going to the cottage tomorrow. Right, I want that cottage covered completely. I want to be able to hear every word they say. Use directional microphones all around the outside, limpets on the windows, and the milk. How many pints do they take?
According to Agent 6, 2. Delivered at 7 a.m.
Good.
See, this if you want to know about the minute details of life at the McLean cottage, this is the episode for you.
Point.
It's also the 14th, according to the calendar on the desk there. I don't know what month, but
We don't want to stay too long at the cottage, Sam.
We don't like the McLeans all that much.
You think Mac will let Joe come along?
We'll check with him when we get to the cottage.
No. Yep, Sam and Shane have pulled up in a caravan. Meanwhile, out on the coast behind the cottage is Kirsten and his sidekick chap listening in.
Switch to 3.
And the interior set is, I think, the interior set from the speedboat from Splashdown, but the model of the boat is the seahorse from Double Agent.
Bring in 4.
Which, and you can see in this episode, it still has the name Seahorse on the front. It's very faint, but it is there.
No, Professor, you were right. The big rat must remain a secret between the original 4.
Big rat? What does he mean?
Quiet.
Where's Joe? In the kitchen. I want to ask him something.
They're moving into the kitchen. Try 6 and 7. Hello.
This is a very odd shot of Joe here.
Sam?
It almost looks like he's running a little shop.
Can I really?
If your dad
gives you the okay.
A dramatic zoom in on the milk bottles where the listening devices are.
I think we're on to something.
So Joe's going away on holiday with Sam and Shane. We don't know where they're off to, but...
Come on, Joe. Or we'll miss the boat. Miss the boat. The ferry. Get it, Sam?
Yeah. Going by ferry, I guess.
Bye, Dad.
I'll take care of him, Mac. Bye, Sam. Bye, Professor. Bye.
Considering how concerned Mac is for Joe's safety, we see in Double Agent he's not entirely trustworthy of Sam and Shane when it comes to not using Joe on dangerous missions. It's quite out of the norm that he would just let him go without another word.
The big rat is most interesting.
Have we any idea what they were referring to?
It's obviously the initial letters of something. The computer has come up with a list of possibilities.
Oh, that must be fun.
Bearing in mind Professor McLean's electronic background, I take an educated guess at record and transfer for the second half.
Record and transfer? But record and transfer what?
I like that as well, that these are intelligent villains. Dr. Dorota is a really nice character who clearly thinks of himself as being much more intelligent than he actually is. Anyway, Kirsten and his sidekick Chappie have arrived at the cottage. Of course, Mac is there all alone now.
He's coming down.
Oh, Kirsten's got a gun ready.
It's an emergency. Open the door. There's been an accident.
Well, this seems perfectly legit. I'll just unlock the door here, open the door there, and...
Over here.
Oh. Blinded by the headlight, and he's down. That's it. Mac's unconscious. It looks like the baddies are gonna head off to Dr. de Rota's clinic with him.
That rifle of yours is most versatile, Curson. Does it fire anything else apart from listening devices and hypodermics?
Just ordinary bullets.
Well, I'm sure.
I like that they've left Mac in his dressing gown, right down to his little slippers.
Our friend is trying to speak. Rather monosyllabic, but no doubt he will tell us more when the effect of the drug wears off.
Like?
This is another great Jeremy Wilkin character as well. There's,
like the secret of the big rat.
I don't remember ever seeing a guest character who's so secure in their own idea of their own superiority. He's very smug. He's very...
This is alive, Joe.
Sure is, Uncle Sam.
This is nice too.
Let's give it another try.
Right.
I just love how free and relaxed Sam and Shane are with each other. It's just, it's just another song. Yeah, why not? Oh, this is a nice view of the...
How do you feel?
Path down to the...
what am I doing?
The ground.
My name is Conrad de Rota. And for the present, you are a guest at my clinic.
A guest? I was brought here by force.
My dear Professor.
We want information, and we will get it one way or another.
By hook or by crook.
It's so crude. Let me clarify the position.
I know bigger and longer words.
As a patient. That is why your unusual attire was accepted by customs.
Where's here?
They dragged him through customs while he was unconscious. That's brilliant.
1,000 feet above sea level.
There is only one way up and one way down. By cable car.
And we controlled it.
You are our patient. As long as we choose.
Yeah.
The detector.
Ooh, a plane. A rescue plane. Nice bright orange. I recognise that model. But I can't pin it down exactly.
Not radar?
No. The interference from the mountains would be too great.
I'm going to hazard a guess and say that's the model of the plane.
Amplified thousands of times.
Joe, Sam and Mac fly out in King for a day, but that's probably wrong.
My friend has a point. The information we require concerns the big rat.
The big rat?
Yes, Professor, don't tell us you've never heard of it.
Oh, you mean the big rat. Brain, impulse, galvanoscope, record and transfer.
Oh, that was easy. Almost as if Mac was expecting to have to be answering that question.
Just about be the right spot, Mr. Weston.
Oh, shut up, Joe. You don't have your glasses on. You don't know anything at the moment.
You take brain patterns and transfer them to your 9-year-old son, who then carries out dangerous assignments for WIN.
Oh, this is great, because instead of fighting to protect the secret, Mac is just, here, there's everything. I can show you the blueprints if you want. And the fact that the truth is so impossible to believe is what's gonna...
Origin of Joe's code name. Joe 90.
Is what's gonna save him.
We heard every word you said.
Yes, of course. You used miniature listening devices. Let me see, J152s on the windows, dart types in Weston's office and over the cottage door, wasn't it? And, oh yes, a rather inferior Limpet 101 on the milk bottle.
Technological snobbery.
Oh, don't take it like that. The 101s weren't all that inferior.
Huh? I don't understand.
So, Mac and the rest of the WIN gang were one step ahead of our villains all the way, and we thought it was the villains who were one step ahead of them.
There is no possible escape from this clinic. You are our prisoner.
On the contrary, Doctor. At this very moment, my son Joe will no doubt be on his way to rescue me.
And here we go with one of the nicest pieces of incidental music in the entire show. Sam and Shane are watching the back of the caravan open to reveal...
Here he comes.
A balloon. And I remember this piece was scheduled to be played at was it 2008 or 2009-ish, the Barry Gray Centenary concert at the Royal Festival Hall in London, and this piece was one that was in the programme and got dropped for time, and it was such a shame because this is just one of my favourite bits of music from the show. I think it only appears in this episode. It does feel like the sort of music you'd get in an old 50s film about bold explorers and, well, hot air balloonists. Joe is making his way up through the mountains towards the clinic by balloon.
Did you check the cable car?
Of course. It's at the top and the winch is locked off. No one can use it.
I like how spooked these two are now.
I've been very foolish.
Just by how unnaturally casual Mac is being.
My son Joe will be here in about 8 minutes.
And, a hot air balloon is a fairly slow method of transportation, but it's so nice when matched to this music. And these gorgeous model shots of the mountains, and I think we've got a view here, yeah, a view just looking down, Joe's viewpoint from the balloon. This is why I love this show, it's just so nice! And no one will ever convince me otherwise.
The Met boys were right about the wind direction, Sam. It's taking me right to the clinic.
Fine, Joe. We'll arrange the reception committee for our two friends. Out.
So, if Mac won't tell them the truth, or at least the truth they want to hear, what can they do? Manacle him to the wall in front of a great big drill.
Coulson found this toy and installed it here. I don't want to use painful methods, Professor, but unless you change your ridiculous story and tell us about the big rat, I will have no alternative.
Right. I used the big rat to give my son Joe brain patterns.
I do like as well how the villains go from like 1 to 10 in terms of their interrogation techniques. It's like, stage 1, we have a quiet, gentle, civilized conversation. And stage 2, we drill his face off. And this is a really nasty drill as well. It's clearly used for industrial work. There's so many spiky bits, and there's even a saw in there as well to deal with the bits, the spiky bits. Oh, it's very. And I've heard actually people say this is a rather this is one of the scariest images of the show. And to be fair, this was a show that didn't really do scary stuff. This show's forte was more hardcore violence, and what could be more hardcore violent than this drill?
This is your...
And the whining as well.
I have nothing more to say.
Oh, look at that, spiky bits and circular bits and spinning bits and nasty stuff. Mac is very calm considering this is a plan that requires split-second timing on Joe's part, otherwise his dad's going to get his face sawn off. Here he comes, zooming in over the clinic. I don't know what the other staff and patients must think of all this. We don't see anybody else here. Oh, Mac closes his eyes. Maybe it is all too late now. Nah, here he is, Joe's touchdown. Oh, nasty close-up on that.
As about the big rat.
Drill. And now Mac has got sweat on his face. He's starting to panic. Here he comes. Good old Joe.
Hold it right there. I'm coming in.
Somehow.
Boy.
Oh, that's it. Kirsten's going to go for his hunting rifle. Can he get it? He's got it. Oh, and he almost got Joe. I'm not sure if this was part of the timing plan, but that drill is so close to Mac's face now. He's just shut his eyes. Maybe they've allocated time for a quick gunfight in the plan here. Oh, the drill is right in front of his face, and as Joe switches it off, that can't have been planned, but the way the last rotation of the drill just catches Mac's glasses, as if to say it was that close. Oh, exciting stuff. Anyway.
Right.
Yes, I'm fine.
I'm afraid they're getting away. As planned.
Yes, Joe. Just like we planned.
Ah, that's it. Dorota and Kirsten are on their way down in the cable car. Another very long sequence. This music feels like it feels like a sort of 1930s, 40s crime serial or something. And who should be waiting at the cable car terminal at the bottom of the mountain?
Dorota, you are under arrest.
Someone who really wants to make this arrest himself.
Mr. Weston.
For reasons that I waffled over earlier, but we're about to hear repeated.
Weston. Kidnapping? I presume you have evidence of some kind?
We've got enough. WIN always have ways and means. Rather better than your own.
No.
A miniature device was slipped in Curzon's passport as he passed through customs last night.
You stupid fool.
This is a section I particularly appreciate.
This is great.
I think 4 times is enough. Those Anglo-Saxon farewells begin to grate. And how that Western with his imbecilic puns ever attained his position in world intelligence is beyond me.
Take them away, Sam. Bunch of amateurs.
I love how Shane doesn't even react to that comment. It's just...
You too?
You know, you diss my puns, you are under arrest.
30 years.
For 3 decades of imprisonment. Oh, good stuff. And again in HD, we can see the miniature figures in the model shots are looking pretty unconvincing, but I do like the efforts they make to bring them to life a little, like as the balloon took off there, the little figure of Sam on the ground just leant backwards as if he was watching it go up.
Where are your glasses?
I left them on the ground.
You did what?
Yeah, Mac and Joe have convinced Shane to join them in a balloon ride.
One of my many accomplishments is that I'm an expert balloonist. Joe used my brain pattern, remember?
And I like that so much of the resolution of this episode, at least on WN's part, was off screen. That we were led to believe that the baddies were ahead of them, as I said, and in the end it turned out that they themselves were one step ahead of the people who we thought were one step ahead of them. But it doesn't quite explain where Joe got the knowledge and experience to handle the gun. I don't know if Max got that, but anyway, as Shane Weston is carried off into the sky against his will, we leave Joe 90 with Project 90, and I'm sure I've said this about other episodes as well, but this to me is one of the sort of definitive episodes of the show, if you are on the fence about it, or even if you don't like it, as I understand there are 1 or 2 people out there in this world who sadly are cursed with this shall we say deficiency. This is a really good episode to check out to not only get a sense of this show's sort of whimsical sense of humour, but also I know a lot of people criticise the fact, it's a 9-year-old boy, how could he be a spy? And it's nice to have an episode where you've got villains behaving like that. It's like, no, this can't be the secret. Surely this can't be the secret. We've not put all these resources and time and energy into finding that out. But it's a nice change of pace. It's nice to have a story that sort of focuses on the premise of the series. All the characters are clearly having such great fun, the performers as well. Some lovely music. I can't say enough good things about this one. If you haven't seen Project 90, give it a go. And all the other 29 episodes as well, if you please.
Well, now Chris mocked us there for complaining about the fact that it's Joe 90, but let's find the good bits here and pick them out.
Take long.
So, I mean, the Swiss accents were quite nice.
Yes.
Intelligent baddies. Now, that was nice.
Yes,
makes
a change.
The baddies there were quite threatening because they were smart.
Yeah.
So that was kind of nice. And things like, we've learnt about this big rat thing. We don't know what it means. But knowing the professor's proclivities for computer science, I would hazard a guess that RAT is record and transfer. I mean, that,
yeah, well,
it's
work
quite,
that out well.
It's nice. But
Yeah.
I think it's the details in Joe 90 that really make it such an astonishingly enjoyable watch. Things like learning that on the 15th of the month, Joe and his dad get 2 pints of milk delivered at 7 a.m.
Yes.
I mean, it's that sort of world building which has, kept Joe 90 at the top of his game for the last 50 odd years, and I'm sure it'll continue to do so with generations of fans.
Yes, in a pub quiz somewhere, isn't it? Some Gerry Anderson related quiz. It's got to be.
What time do the McLeans get their milk? And how many pints? Yeah, no, I mean, Project 90, it's an interesting one. Meh. Still Joe 90 though, isn't it?
Okay. All right.
Let's hope for something different. Look, I'm trying to find the positives in things, because even in things you don't like.
Yeah.
I've noticed a few people recently rediscovering Terrorhawks and going, God, actually, I wasn't a fan of this when I was younger, but the model stuff is great.
Yes, they thought they weren't a fan. That's what I always think.
Yes.
You thought you didn't like it. Yes.
Yeah, so maybe that's my problem all over. Yeah. And anyone who dislikes Torchy, it'll clearly be the same for you as well.
Yeah. Okay, fine.
Yes. Anyway, Chris will be back next week with a different randomiser, one would hope. And let's hope it's not Joe 90, just for variety, not because I'm being particularly harsh against the little boy, but...
yeah, it could be, though. Could be another Joe 90.
You're right.
We just don't know.
That's the random nature of the randomiser.
Right. Indeed. Yeah. So, join us next week for another randomiser. Now, another quick reminder to subscribe both to us, the Gerry Anderson podcast, but also First Action Bureau. Now, Jamie, I suppose we can find this on all our usual platforms, can we? Apple Podcasts and Spotify and so on.
Yes, all
YouTube,
good podcast providers know. So don't subscribe on YouTube. We will put the episodes up there, but they will be delayed. You won't get them straight away. I mean, if you're listening to this on YouTube right now, it's really easy to get a podcast app. It doesn't matter whether on your computer, a laptop, Windows, Mac, Android device, an Apple smartphone, whatever it is, there's a podcast app that'll work for you, and then you get them there and get to experience it, in the way we have intended. If you really, really can't manage a podcast app, then yes, the episodes will appear on YouTube eventually, but they won't be immediate releases. So there you go.
And do let us know. Yeah, what you're thinking of First Action Bureau so far, the little trailers and teasers that have been put out. How excited are you for a brand new Gerry Anderson production? Let us know. Yes.
I mean, there'll be, if it's not out already, there'll be a little chat between me and Nick Briggs about it and the various similarities that you're going to find across all things Anderson into this. I think it's probably fair to say that actually Joe 90 has had some influence in First Action Bureau.
Yes, I know what you mean. Yes, I think you're right. I hadn't thought of that.
There are certain elements that I think have come across, and I think it's the potentially more interesting elements of Joe 90 that have made their way into First Action Bureau. You'll have to wait and see for how that pans out, but I think I was just trying to think actually. It's almost like one of the characters' names could be an anagram of Joe 90. Almost. Almost.
Yes.
Not quite.
You're right.
It depends on their middle name, I guess. Anyway,
true.
Let's not go into that any further. But yes, all sorts of Anderson stuff, and it's sort of bits of Gerry Anderson stuff from the past that never quite made it, all brought together and coalesced into something brand new. So we're very excited to share that with you. Please go and subscribe. And now I'll stop talking about it, at least for the next minute.
Fair enough.
Is there anything else before we wrap up Pod 118 of the Gerry Anderson podcast, Richard James?
I think that'll be it for now, but please don't forget to email us at podcast@gerryanderson.co.uk. You can hashtag us on Twitter, Gerry Anderson Podcast, and join our Facebook group where people have lots of fun talking about all things related to Gerry Anderson and beyond.
Yes, and beyond. You're quite right.
Yeah.
Well, beyond Pod 118 will be Pod 119.
Crumbs.
Which is next week. So we'll probably go away until then, and we'll see you next week for the Gerry Anderson podcast, Pod 119. How's that?
Let's do that. We'll see them next week.
All right, deal. Bye.
Bye.
Stage 1 complete.
Let's go.
Spectrum is green.
You know what we could do one week, Richard James? We could really mess with people.
How?
Well, say next week's Pod 119. The next week, we maybe go Pod 134.
What? Do them out of sequence?
Yeah, and we could talk about the previous, 15 pods and how great they were. Do you remember that in Pod 124 and 125?
Best ever. Consistently voted the best podcast ever.
Yes, yeah. Those ones we won awards for. I mean, fantastic.
Yeah, we had Sean Connery on the line, Anthony Hopkins, Judi Dench popping in with the cakes. Do you remember?
Piers Brosnan finally came on board after that request to his agent.
That's right, yes, exactly.
Those are the good ones,
Ross Kemp turned up, Wendy Craig. I mean, amazing. Who thought they would ever find the time?
I forgot about them. Whatever happened to those?
Anyway, I've got to go. Things to do. Sorry, Jamie. Yeah. Anyway, I'll see you next week.
Okay. See you for Pod 312. Bye.
Oh, I think I got away with it.
You have been listening to the Gerry Anderson podcast. Wasn't it fun?
You have been listening to an Anderson Entertainment production.